Welcome back. I'm here. And tonight we have more terrifying accounts from the one and only Mr. Nightmare. Mr. Nightmare has been active on the channel for a while now, and he has some of the most terrifying stories that will keep you up at night. So let's not waste any time and get straight into it. Here we go. No. 1. The House of Horrors. It was, however, very cheap and in need of a lot of work. There is a driveway that goes past a large garden and around to the back of the house where you can park. There's also a detached garage. My plan was to live there for a year or so, fix it up, and then sell it for a profit. Little did I know it was a money pit. Obviously, I was freaked out, sitting in bed not knowing what was up there. The noise continued all throughout the night, and in the morning, I went up to investigate again. Every night I would hear the sound of footsteps followed by the hole reappearing in the morning. I wasn't getting any sleep, and I was constantly stressed out. Not to mention the money I was losing when they went up to the attic. They discovered the hole yet again. As they were standing in the attic talking, the floor gave way, and they fell through. They were both seriously injured. The woman broke her leg, and the man had several broken ribs. I was cleaning the sensory room to get ready for the next day. When I picked the doll up to put it away, it suddenly felt cold to the touch. I shrugged it off and continued tidying up. Day 2 felt uneasy about the doll. We decided to remove it from the sensory room. As we carried it out of the room, it felt colder than ice. My colleague then noticed that the doll's eyes, which were originally blank, were now open and staring directly at us. And if you want to see more videos like this, stay tuned. Once again, it was as if the doll was watching us. We immediately placed it in a bin outside. As I turned to put the doll down, it suddenly moved. I nearly dropped it and ran out of the room in fear. The house sold at auction for well below market value. I took deep breaths and tried to tell myself that it was just my imagination. However, as the minutes passed, I knew that I had to go back in to tidy up. I slowly walked back to the door and opened it to find the doll sitting in the middle of the room. I shut the door quickly and locked it. I spent the rest of the evening in my office until my boss arrived to collect me. I lost a ton of money on the house and had to declare bankruptcy. I still have nightmares about that house to this day. He explained that parents had complained about the doll's sinister appearance. After a month, I started to feel better again. I had learned that the doll had been in the school for 20 years, and no one had ever complained about it before. I've always wondered if it was just a coincidence, but I like to think that whatever haunted the doll was finally laid to rest. He said that we had to remove it from the premises as soon as possible. I was shocked because no one had mentioned anything about the doll to me. I asked why the parents had complained if they'd never seen it. He said that the parents had spoken to each other and were sharing stories about the creepy doll. Some of the children had even drawn pictures of it. It was scary because the children were only 5 years old and had described the doll as having sharp teeth and claws. Because I still had to pay my mortgage despite not being able to live in the house, I couldn't take it anymore, and I called a local priest to come and bless the house. He did so and even sprinkled some holy water on the attic floor. The next night, the footsteps returned, and the hole reappeared again. I had had enough. I packed my things and I never went back. To my horror, the hole had reappeared and was now bigger. One day I got a call from the tenant saying that she wanted to break her contract because the house was haunted. She said she had seen shadows moving around in the attic and had heard footsteps. I agreed to let her out of the contract, and I decided to put the house up for auction. The real estate agent took some pictures of the house and listed it. I called the builder back, who told me the same thing again. I told him about the previous hole and he said it must have just happened again. I paid him again and he fixed it once more. In the morning after, of course, not sleeping a wink, I went up to the attic again and looked around. I discovered a hole in the ceiling in the corner where there was no hole the day before. And when I put my hand through it, I felt air on the other side, meaning there was a void above me. I called a builder to come and see if he could figure out what was going on, and if he could block up the hole. According to him, the joists had just randomly rotted away, which I thought was odd. We had a clown doll in our sensory room, which is basically a room full of different items that the children can play with, to help them calm down if they are overstimulated. It was made out of cloth and was dressed like a clown. It didn't have a face. The children seemed to like it. They liked to dress it up and feed it with their food during meal times. He filled the hole in and charged me a hefty sum for the privilege, but more on that later. I moved into a new house in 2019. The home is an old Victorian home built in the 1880s. The house is pretty isolated, but it's in a nice neighborhood. It's set back a long way from the road. I was unpacking in the attic room, and I found a small wooden box in the eaves. Inside were 2 ceramic dolls, one of which had its eyes gouged out. They were clearly antique. I couldn't believe how creepy they were, and just as I finished looking inside the box, I heard footsteps in the attic. Now I live alone, and I knew no one else had a key to the house. I went to check if maybe my son had somehow got upstairs, but he hadn't. I don't think he could have even climbed the stairs at that point. He was only 2 years old. I put the box down and continued unpacking. The first strange thing happened a few days after I moved in. That night, I woke up in the middle of the night to what sounded like screams in the attic. For a while things were okay. Then one night I was awoken by what sounded like footsteps in the attic again. This happened over and over again. Since I couldn't sell a house that had a gaping hole in the roof, I rented it out. One afternoon a couple came to view the property. Clown doll, I am a special needs teacher and work with kids from ages 5 to 16. One weekend I was working extra hours and had to stay late in school. I stayed quite late until about 7 p.m. I stood outside the room trying to calm myself down. The next day I told my colleagues about the incident. Later that day, I was called to the principal's office. After it was removed, incidents started to happen. Children started falling ill and some teachers even quit. The atmosphere in the school just became very negative. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to look at another set of real personal stories that are so scary they make your blood run cold. And as always, if you want to share your own scary story, use the link in the description or comment section below. And if you like this sort of content, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. I was an emergency medical technician for a busy ambulance service in a large city. We got dispatched to a local hospital for a possible cardiac arrest. I grew up on a farm, and when I was younger, my sister and I used to go down to the creek that ran through our property. One day we were playing by the creek, and we decided to follow it upstream. After walking for about 15 minutes, the creek seemed to disappear into a cave. Being the explorers that we were, we decided to check it out. My sister stayed by the entrance while I walked further in. The cave was fairly large, and the ceiling was covered in these strange formations that sparkled in the light coming from the entrance. I walked further and further until I reached the end of the cave and turned around to go home. That's when I realized that the opening to the cave was gone. All I saw was solid rock. I tried to climb over the rocks to where I thought the opening should be, but there was nothing there. I was trapped. I started to panic and began screaming for my sister. I heard her scream back, but it didn't seem to be getting any louder. I started to cry, and I don't remember how long I was in there. But eventually I calmed down and decided to explore. I found a small opening near the ceiling and managed to squeeze my small child's body through it. I crawled through a small tunnel until I saw a light and crawled out to find myself back on the surface and a lot further down the creek than where I entered the cave. I ran home as fast as I could, not stopping until I reached my front door. To this day, I have no idea how I escaped that cave or how long I was in there. When we arrived, we were given a crash cart and told the patient was in the emergency room waiting for us. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to share your own scary story, use the link in the description or comment section below. And if you like this sort of content, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. Thanks for watching. The crash cart is basically a gurney with all the life-saving equipment on it. As we wheeled the crash cart into the emergency room, there was a man face down on the bed with his hands open and slightly cupped like he was holding something. He was pale and clearly dead. I remember thinking, wow, whoever this guy's family is, must be proud. He died with dignity. Then I heard a noise and froze. I looked over to see the male nurse who'd been following us enter the room and slam the door shut. I immediately went to check on the patient and noticed something terrifying. His hands were now clenched tight, as if he had just grabbed onto something solid and was trying to climb out of the bed. I slammed on the brakes, jumped off the gurney, and ran out of the room yelling for help. People were staring at me as I ran out of the room. I quickly explained the situation, and people started helping. Between all of us, we were able to push him back down onto the bed. From that point on, I never accepted a crash cart assignment without at least one other person, even during the day shift. I left the service after a year, and I still wonder if that patient made it out of the hospital alive. Now let's get into it. It was pretty slow, so we were just chatting while we cleaned up, the only table that had customers at it. One of my coworkers was telling me about some ghost hunting show she was watching, and she said she could hear the ghosts talking through the TV. I laughed and said, well, maybe if you listen closely, you can hear them now. She listened intently, and then said, what the hell? There was this distinct voice right beside us saying, why aren't you cleaning behind the counter? I instantly stopped laughing because I could hear it too. It was an old, raspy voice that sounded exactly like an old man. We both looked around the restaurant, which was completely empty except for us, and the customers who were all looking at us strangely. We started cleaning behind the counter and the voice stopped. Maybe it was a one-off thing, but ever since then, whenever there was no customers, we would hear scratching and dragging sounds like someone was moving a chair or table around. It definitely freaked us out. Our first story comes from Reddit user The Talking Skull. Our next story comes from another Reddit user. I was working as a server at a small restaurant, and there were only 2 of us working that night. Our next story comes from another Reddit user. Those were 3 chilling accounts from a real person. What do you do when you encounter an entity that doesn't belong in our reality? Today we will explore the horrifying and mysterious tale of a being witnessed by a real person. Our protagonist goes by the name Alasta. He has been a member of the site since 2013. And has earned a reputation for sharing his personal experiences that border on the paranormal. One such incident was his encounter with a disturbing entity that he saw while working as a security guard at an undisclosed location. The entity's presence was so unsettling that it left him questioning the very nature of reality itself. The man carrying the black duffel bag eventually stopped in front of one of the offices and seemed to be waiting for something. Curiosity and concern battled within Alistair, as he considered whether he should alert the police. The thought of a stranger lurking in the building sent shivers down his spine. Just when he was about to call the police, the door to the office opened once again, but it wasn't the man who stepped out. Instead, it was someone else, someone who appeared to be in a state of panic. However, he decided against it, believing that any potential risk was too great and deciding to handle the situation on his own. The man with the soulless eyes continued to stare at him, and Elastic could feel his heart pounding in his chest. In that moment, he knew he had stumbled upon something truly terrifying, something that defied human comprehension. But before Alistair could make sense of the situation, the man disappeared around the corner. He had already seen enough to know that this was not a place he wanted to be, but he couldn't bring himself to move. He was trapped in a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. Alasta was left stunned and confused. Who was this person, and what were they doing in the building? The man's eyes were pitch black, devoid of any light or color, as if they were empty sockets staring back at him. It was as if he was looking at a creature from beyond this world. Just when Alasta began to think that this was a pointless endeavor, the door to the office opened, and the man entered. Alasta couldn't believe what he was seeing. Let's delve into this terrifying tale and see what insights it offers into the unknown. It all started when Alistair was working the night shift alone as a security guard. His primary responsibilities included monitoring CCTV cameras, responding to alarms, and ensuring the safety of the building and its occupants. On this particular night, everything seemed to be going according to plan. With a sense of urgency, Alasta grabbed his flashlight and set off to investigate. As he rounded the corner, he found the man sitting on the floor with his head in his hands. Alistair couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, thinking that he might finally get some answers. There were no unusual alarms or signs of trouble, and Alasta was able to complete his rounds without incident. However, that all changed when he checked the CCTV footage from one of the office buildings on the complex. That's when he saw something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. In the footage, he saw a man walking down the hallway, who seemed to be carrying something bulky. Now, this wouldn't have been out of the ordinary, except for one crucial detail. The man was carrying what looked like a large black duffel bag, despite the fact that no one was supposed to be in the building after hours. A last resort decided to investigate further. He pulled up more footage and discovered that the same man had entered the building earlier in the evening. But how did he get in? The security footage showed the man using an access door, which should have triggered an alarm if it was opened after hours. Yet there was no record of anyone entering or leaving the building. With a sense of dread, Elastic continued to monitor the situation. The entire scene was like something out of a horror movie, and as he watched, the door closed behind the man, plunging him into darkness. As the minutes ticked by, Alasta found himself becoming increasingly uneasy. The newcomer was clearly distressed and began frantically searching the hallway as if looking for something or someone. But as the seconds turned into minutes, he realized that he needed to take action. But as he approached, the man suddenly looked up, and what he saw in those eyes sent chills down his spine. Terrified, Alasta stumbled back, unsure of what to do next. As Alasta stood there frozen in fear, he couldn't help but wonder what other horrors might be lurking in the shadows. If you find this story interesting, please stay tuned for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.